Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm joined today by Rural Municipality of Wood Buffalo Mayor Don Scott and Mackenzie County Reeve Josh Knelson, as well as Shane Schreiber from the Alberta Emergency Management Agency and Colleen Walford from our Environment and Parks River Forecasting Centre. For the second time in 4 years, people in the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo are facing an evacuation. In 2016, it was a devastating wildfire. Today, it's flooding caused by a massive ice jam, one that is about 25 kilometers long. As of 7 p.m. yesterday evening, the ice jam had shortened, though, by 1 kilometer and has darkened and deteriorated significantly. That's good news. But the dangerous flooding effects from these ice jams still remain. A state of a local emergency has been declared along the Athabasca and Clearwater rivers. This applies to all of Fort McMurray, Draper, the lower town sites, and Clearwater areas. Further to the west, a 38-kilometer ice jam on the Peace River also threatens Fort Vermilion, Lacrete, and other communities in Mackenzie County. This is a serious situation. Ice jam floods are very unpredictable, and conditions can change quickly with little warning. There is no reasonable engineering solution to unlock the ice jams at this point. We have to rely on warm weather to soften the ice. To protect people in the path of the ice and flood, mandatory and voluntary evacuation orders are in place for multiple communities. We know there are more than 13,000 Albertans away from their homes right now. Wood Buffalo, Mackenzie County, and the Alberta government are coordinating our efforts to make this evacuation as easy as possible on families. If you're in Fort McMurray and under evacuation order, you should proceed to the drive-through registration center at the Oil Sands Discovery Center only if you require accommodation or other supports. And if you're in Fort Vermilion, you're asked to call the reception center at 780-927-3718. Both the mayor and the reeve are on this call and will be able to provide more information for evacuees and others affected in a few minutes. We're also taking every measure to protect both evacuees and personnel from the pandemic. People have had to stay home, of course, because of COVID-19, and now we are telling people to leave their homes to stay safe from flood waters. This can be scary. To everyone affected by the ice jams, your health and safety and that of your families is the most important thing to all of us. Hotels and work camps are being used where possible, so you and your families can be in safe and contained quarters. We ask that everyone remember to keep a safe physical distance from other evacuees and those that are helping you. This evacuation is happening at a time when people are already hurting financially. We know that a flooding event during COVID-19 response is having exceptional impacts on people. We want you to know that we are here to help support your needs. We are also supporting municipalities with equipment from the Alberta Emergency Management Agency's Provincial Operations Centre. Communication during disasters is key. That's why the Provincial Government Centre sent 100 radios and mobile telecommunication systems to Fort McMurray. We're also deployed a Tiger Dam kit, which is a self-contained trailer with all equipment necessary to put in place approximately 1,000 meters of tubing that can be filled with water and stacked to provide protection from rising waters. To all residents in affected communities, for your safety, please follow the latest details on the river conditions and forecast in your area. Please follow directions, and if you're being evacuated, cooperate with officials who are moving you to safe alternative accommodations. If you haven't done so already, please download the Alberta Emergency Alert app to keep informed. We know this is a frightening time for people having to leave their homes. We are doing everything possible to protect you, your loved ones, and your property. A theme throughout every emergency in Alberta that we have ever faced in our province is we are in it together, we will work together, we are resilient people, and we stand by our neighbours. Thank you, and I would like to also take a quick moment after being in Fort McMurray yesterday to thank all of our frontline officials from, of course, the government, Alberta Environment and Parks, as well as municipal officials. It was shocking to see many of our Alberta Environment and Parks employees who were working on the ground diligently, who had also lost their homes and were under evacuation notices. So our thoughts and prayers are with everybody, of course, in both of these communities. I will now turn things over to Mayor Scott and Reeve Knelson for a report on the situation in their respective communities. First of all, His Worship Mayor Scott with an update from the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo.
Thank you very much, Minister Nixon, and I just want to begin by thanking Minister Nixon for all his hard work. As soon as the flooding became an issue in our region, the first person that was on the phone with me was Minister Nixon, and we've had regular communications ever since. I believe it was very important that he and the Premier both made it up here yesterday and saw things firsthand, and spent several hours up here. We did an aerial tour, the Premier and I, and saw the the devastating effects of this flood from the air. Plus, we had a tour of the ice jam itself. So the sheer size of the ice jam, which is incredibly long. Yesterday it was 25 kilometers, as was said. It's shortened slightly, but seeing it from the air gave us both, a real insight into how powerful this flood is. Now, this is a 1 in 100 year flood, so this is something that we haven't seen in this generation. I've talked to some elders in the region, and a 1 in 100 year flood is exceptionally rare, obviously, but it's actually happening at this time, obviously, at the same time as our COVID-19 pandemic. So, we have the dual combination of issues going on. When we spoke to the Premier yesterday, we raised several issues. We talked about the potential for military intervention on the ice itself, and what was concluded is that would not work for a lot of reasons. It's the sheer size of the ice jam itself that really prevents the military from using explosives or CF-18s. There's been a lot of suggestions, but none of them are apparently workable in this situation. So I was grateful for the expertise that was provided, and it was at least people understand what the options are. Basically, we're going to be waiting on Mother Nature a while, and if other options arise as we go forward, the Premier and Minister Nixon have assured me that those would be looked at as we do go forward. The Red Cross is on the ground in our region, so if people want to make donations, I would encourage them to donate to the Red Cross. And if people want information, they can go to rmwb.ca. I want to let all the people know in our region that your municipality is with you. Your mayor and council are getting regular updates. We've had great discussions with all levels of government. And to all the people impacted, we are with you. There's no more resilient people, I believe, in Canada who have been through so much than the people of Wood Buffalo, given what they had experienced with the fire. And just before the fire, there was a precipitation flood in 2013. So there's been a series of issues in this region, challenges that we've overcome, and we're going to overcome this as well. So thank you very much for those few minutes to speak.
Awesome, thanks. Reeve Knelson, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. And again, Mr. Nixon, it's good to hear you here, and it's very encouraging having you guys pay attention and reaching out to us. I know Mr. Kenny was on the phone yesterday. I understand that you can't get everywhere, and that's absolutely no problem at all. I know Mr. Williams, our MLA, did come out here, and he did see some of the damages firsthand. Currently, we have, I guess, about 451 evacuees, of which about 45% are staying with friends and family in either holiday trailers or basements or what have you, and the other 55% are staying either in hotels or motels. We've got about 24-ish evacuees from Buttertown, which is across the river from Fort McMurray, and then another about 10 or so evacuees from Beaver Ranch, which is a little ways downstream from Fort McMurray. The water levels have remained stable in the last pretty much 24 hours, I guess. But the ice jam the total of the ice jam is now at Fort McMurray, and with the reaching out about 40 kilometers up to Beaver Ranch. We do have a boil water advisory for the town of Fort McMurray because our water plant has been jeopardized because of the flooding. We are working on fixing that. We're working diligently. Our staff has been working all night long for the last couple nights already, trying to get the wells up and running in the creek that got flooded, and then which will give us the opportunity to pump the water about 40 kilometers to Fort McMurray, Hamlet, which is Lacrete is about 40 kilometers from Fort McMurray, so that we can pump the water this way. We do have a little bit of power shortage issues right now, but ACO is working on restoring those. and hopefully that'll be up and running. Most of Fort McMurray does have power right now. There's a few homes, in which mostly in the evacuated areas that are out right now. But other than that, this is a huge as well. It's a 1 in a 100-year flood. The last time it flooded to this extent was 1934. I know with communication with Alberta Emergency Management, we do have pumps on the way over here, so that once the water does reside, we will be able to take and come up with a plan to get rid of it and get to it as quickly as possible. And other than that, I think that's, unless anybody has anything, I think that's about all that I can think of for now. It's a waiting game, like the Mayor mentioned before. The magnitude of a water like this, the Peace River is a huge river, and when the water comes like this, I know we've been bombarded with questions as why we didn't have sandbag this or sandbag that, but when you get 2 to 4 foot thick chunks of ice that are who knows how big, it's pretty hard to take and set anything up. And more, as more pictures come out, I think people are realizing that, you know what, there was simply nothing that we could do, because there's no beginning and end. Like, it's not like we can even do 1,000 meters. Like, it's so massive. There was no realistic way right now that we could take and sandbag it or quickly put up any tiger dams or what have you. It is merely pretty much begging the good Lord to have some mercy on us and hope for the water to reside so that we can get to work and clean this beautiful community back up. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much for that update, Reeve Knelson. I'm going to ask Colleen Walford from our Environment Parks River Forecasting Center to come up and say a few words. Thanks,
Thank
Colleen.
you very much. So I just have an update on the conditions of the ice jams in the Athabasca and the Peace River. So as it's already been discussed, the observation flight completed this morning at about 11 o'clock showed that the ice jam had shortened by approximately 1 kilometer. Also overnight, we saw approximately 10 centimeter rise in the Clearwater River downstream in the downtown and 2 centimeter rise at Draper. This is primarily due to incoming flows along the Clearwater and not necessarily what's occurring along the Athabasca. In addition to that, the deterioration of the jam that we first saw yesterday is continuing. We have very nice sunny conditions up in Fort McMurray today. We hope that continues tomorrow, and it will continue to deteriorate the ice jam. There was also observed first in some satellite information looked at last night that there was a jam at Fort McKay downstream of the town of Fort McMurray. That did release a little bit earlier this morning. There's no indications right now from the ice flight that there were any impacts in that community. But the ice is moving and continually breaking the intact ice further downstream, so we hope that continues. With regards to the ice jam that is set in Fort McMurray, over the next few days, there are a couple of things that could happen. One, the jam remains in place, and it just continues to melt out with the warm weather. Two, it could release and flow completely downstream and continue on its way to the pad, Peace Athabasca Delta, or unfortunately it does have the potential to release and then reform as a jam further downstream. So this is why we're continuing those ice observation reports daily or almost twice daily, depending on the conditions of the weather. This is determined how much we're actually seeing in terms of deterioration. So what we're looking at here is we have open water on the upstream end of the jam and open water on the downstream end of the jam. And you can see that the jam continues up into the Clearwater as well. These are some pictures that were taken of the jam. So we have the upper end in the top left corner. This is called the head of the ice jam. In the middle is actually what consists of an ice jam. It's rubbly ice, it's fractured, it's been traveling from all the way upstream, and it's basically welded together in that spot. And then down to the right, we have the toe of the jam, which is where it's basically holding everything behind it in place. With regards to conditions in Peace River, it was reported at 0:30 hours this morning that water levels had stopped rising in that area, and we have clear conditions, so there does not appear to be any further ice coming in from upstream. The jam does continue all the way to intact ice, so this is not the same as what's occurring in Fort McMurray. If the mechanism for this is it either will melt out or it will continue to break that intact ice, similar to what's occurring or what occurred in Fort McKay. And that is it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Colleen. I think we're going to go to the phones. We have a few folks on the line. So we'll take your first question. Can you just let us know who you are and who your question is for, please? We'll do one question, one follow-up, if you don't mind. Thanks.
First question is from Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I guess it's for Minister Nixon. I'm wondering, what is it that you think you need the most in terms of help right now, and what would make the provincial government pull the lever on asking Ottawa for help?
At this point, we are fairly satisfied that both the province and the municipality have the situation under control. And we heard very clearly, the Premier and I, when we were on the ground yesterday, for the need for tiger dams, increased sandbags, as well as law enforcement, and then, of course, some options for how we handle people that are being evacuated. I'll talk about the last first. At this point, people are being evacuated, and my understanding, and we've been briefed, that we do have enough occupancy in motels and camps, as well as family within the community or outside of the community for people being evacuated. The municipality and then ultimately the province will be handling the compensation for the motels, as well as the food issue. If that was to change, we would obviously have to adjust, but we are confident that we're being able to keep care of the evacuees well at this time. In addition to those other issues, as far as pumps and dams and sandbags, they were all hot-shotted up overnight. They are taking precautions in regards to the hospital in downtown Fort McMurray, which is obviously a pretty critical piece of infrastructure that we're making sure is protected as a precautionary measure. My understanding is there's no water compromising that facility yet, but we want to make sure that it's safe. And we feel at this moment that between the municipality and our resources here and assets of the provincial government, that we're in control. If that was to change, we would immediately, through Minister Madhu, who's the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and ultimately the Senior Minister in charge of emergencies in the province, would contact his counterpart federally, and we would ask for help from either other assets within the federal government and or the armed forces. But at this point, we do not think that that's needed, and we'll stay in contact with the municipalities, and if that changes, of course, we would adjust. I want to stress there has been no request from the municipality, and both the mayor and the reeve who are on the phone will confirm that. We have had some conversations, though, again, in regards to Fort McMurray, primarily around whether or not there was some ability from our armed forces to be able to help with explosives around the ice jam, and that would have made the situation worse. So we haven't went down that road, and we'll again, I just want to stress, we would call in if we thought we needed it, but we think that we have the situation well under control at the moment.
You have a follow-up, Rafi?
Yeah, the follow-up would be for Reeve Knelson. I'm just curious as to where you're sending evacuees in your territory. I remember, last year during the fires, of course, there were these evacuation centers and camps, which would obviously not be ideal because of the pandemic situation right now. So could you talk to me about where the current ones have gone, and where, if you have more that need to leave, where would they go?
Yes, thank you. Out of the people that have been evacuated, about 45% are staying with friends and families via guest homes or holiday trailers, etc. And then about 55% are staying in the communities of Lacrete, which is just down the road a little ways, and then or in high level. So and they're staying in hotels. About 55% are staying in hotels and motels, and about 45% are staying with friends and family.
Excellent. Can we go to the next question, please?
Yes, Kenny Trenton, Kicks FM.
Hi, I guess my first question would be for Minister Nixon. And Minister, I guess the first question I have here is that it seems like both in the northeast and the northwest, major ice jams are the cause of these floods. Is there anything, I guess, in the future that you could do, given the fact that these are probably, as you mentioned before, once in a century type of experiences? Is there anything that at least you may have learned from this to be able to maybe try to, prevent this or at least mitigate any flood risks in the future?
The reality is we saw an unprecedented year as far as a very long period of time of extreme cold, followed by rapid warmth, which is what's created these once in a lifetime or once in a 100-year type scenarios. I don't think that, quite frankly, from our understanding, that there's much that we could do from infrastructure capacity or mechanisms to be able to prevent that. It's not similar to a lot of the conversations that we have around flood mitigation issues, usually in Alberta, which is about large snowpack combined with large precipitation, which usually actually happens a couple weeks from now. What I can tell you that I have learned is the River Forecasting Centre and the steps that have been put in place at Alberta Environment and throughout the Alberta government in anticipation of these events and as a result of some of the flooding situations that we've had in the past have worked well. One thing I've heard from every municipality involved was how much they've appreciated that support and being able to have ice engineers and people that understand the river system on the ground fast to help municipalities respond to these situations. But the reality is Mother Nature's throwing something at us that's unique, and we have to come together with the tools that we have and be able to help protect our communities. I would also stress that I think our overall Alberta Emergency Management System, led by Municipal Affairs, has worked well to be able to bring all the different agencies, all the different departments together to be able to help manage these situations and to help municipalities on the ground who ultimately have the ultimate authority in these emergencies. That's worked well. So really what I've learned from this situation is that a lot of our systems that are in place are working well, and we're able to be able to lower or reduce a lot of the damage that's taking place because of this and be able to help Albertans as best as possible in these emergencies.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do, and it's for Reeve Knelson. And Mr. Reeve, I guess the question I have for you is that I was chatting with somebody in high level earlier this morning, and one of the things they'd mentioned is that quite a few evacuees from the Fort McMurray area have actually taken up residence there in terms of hotels or maybe staying with friends and family. Always just seems like whenever these types of situations happen in the Northwest, is that neighboring municipalities always seem to step up for each other. Can you talk about at least that kind of camaraderie you have with neighboring governments around there to help each other when things happen like this?
Yes, thanks, Kenny. I mean, we experienced this last summer with the Chuckay Creek fire. You're absolutely right. But the reality of it is, everybody up north here, I mean, it's a big open area, but these are smaller communities, even though it's a vast, vast area. Most everybody has either friends and or family in each community. It doesn't matter which community it is within the boundaries of Mackenzie County. Everybody's got some kind of connection to another community, and it really shows when something like this happens, where each community steps up and goes above and beyond. And in all reality, it's kind of like we're a big family. I mean, we do have our disagreements, but when stuff like this happens, it's really encouraging to know that people do step up, and it's something to be very grateful for, and it's just one of the things that makes it wonderful to live up where we do.
All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, I believe we have at least one more person on the phone, so we'll go to the next caller.
Yes, Terry Reith, CBC.
Yes, hi, thank you. Thank you for taking the call. For Minister Nixon and Shane Schreiber, please. This evacuation is clearly causing or has some extra precautions involved with it because of COVID-19. First off, can you just walk us through, once again, just what sort of extra precautions have to be taken? And we do have a number of hotel rooms available at this moment in time, but during the summer when we may have larger evacuations, that may not be an option. So what are the lessons learned here that can be applied to future, perhaps larger evacuation plans?
Hi, Terry. It's Shane Schreiber, the Managing Director of the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. With respect to the first part of your question, in this particular case, one of the precautions we're taking is putting people up in hotels and in the work camps where they can have individual accommodations. So they're not in a communal setting. So for instance, in some disasters in the past, you've seen evacuation centers set up where it's in a hockey rink and it's cots in the community center or in the hockey rink. In a communal setting, in this under COVID, we certainly want to do that because of the potential for rapid spread if there is a COVID positive person in there. So we've gone to essentially individual accommodations. We've also made available, so Alberta Health Services is very much aware and tuned to the people that are going into these accommodations. So they're doing screening at the accommodations to make sure that people are, they're not reporting fevers or any symptoms of COVID. So we're almost certain that people going in at least are asymptomatic. And then to do a little bit on the second part of your question, just ask that again.
Yes, what are some of the lessons learned? This is approximately 12,000 people from Fort McMurray where you have a good stock of hotel rooms. We've seen fires, particularly the last year, bad wildfires, and large numbers of evacuees in places that may not be able to absorb them quite as easily.
Yeah, so that's
What are our lessons learned here?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when we don't have the capacity for commercial accommodation and we couldn't, the use of communal accommodation is not a good idea, like in the case under COVID. There are a couple of other options that we can actually use. And so the first one is we can look at post-secondary institutions. And so if you remember back in 2013, the University of Calgary, the University of Lethbridge opened their doors to evacuees from High River and other places. And during the wildfire in 2016, a good number of people from the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo actually were welcomed at the University of Alberta. So those are a couple of options that we can use. And then there's the other option of actually setting up a temporary neighborhood like we did in 2013 for High River, where we actually built a purpose-built camp for evacuees, long-term evacuees. So those are a couple of the options we can use and have used in the past.
Do you have a follow-up, Terry?
Yes, if I can just, on a separate note, there have been concerns raised in Fort McMurray about some hoarding, people scooping up all of the bottled water that was available there. Any thoughts from anyone on this phenomenon?
Well, yeah, I know that the Regional Emergency Operations Center is keeping their eye and ears out for any of that. And if you remember back in 2016, we actually imposed price controls up there to prevent that kind of, so first of all, price gouging and also hoarding. So I would just say that, so far the behavior of the evacuees and everybody supporting them has been exemplary, and hats off. And I would just say that, I think that any behavior like that would be despicable, and you're in the end, you're probably, your neighbors are going to know what you've done. So if you don't need the supplies, then make sure that you can share them, or that there's some for others.
Thank you.
Minister?
Yeah, I'll just add quickly to that. It's unfortunate if incidents like that are taking place, but from what the Premier and I saw on the ground yesterday in Fort McMurray, Albertans can be very proud of Fort McMurray. That should not surprise us at all, both the local leadership but as well as the community as a whole. Things are well organized up there. Everybody was working together to help protect neighbors. And so I was certainly proud of Fort McMurray yesterday. And I think we'll close this off today with just reassuring, again, all of the North and these communities that have been impacted by flooding that the Alberta government stands with your municipalities, and we will get through this together and keep moving forward as time goes by. And with that said, we're out of time today, unfortunately, and we'll end it there.